Welcome to the Science of Reading module, Part 3, Fluency. We value your time and appreciate your active participation during this module. Here are a few suggested learning norms to make the most of your time. Work in an environment with as few distractions as possible so that you can engage and reflect in this module. Take notes and jot down your ideas and your questions as needed. And finally, use this time wisely to ensure that your professional learning with university instructors is productive. Our agenda for the Fluency module today, we'll first do an introduction and review. Then we'll look at defining what fluency is and understanding what fluency sounds like. Then we'll review some strategies for teaching fluency and end with a summary of our learning. By the end of this fluency module, participants will be able to know and understand the three components of fluency, express why fluency is important for skilled reading. They'll be able to recognize fluency in the classroom and use instructional strategies to build students' fluency. Throughout this module, you will hear about the third pillar of literacy, which is fluency. Before we begin, though, let's review highlights of the first two pillars, phonemic awareness and phonics. Our elementary instructors learned about these in earlier modules, but secondary instructors might also benefit from this summary when preparing to teach or support fluency in the classroom. Phonemic awareness is the ability to identify, manipulate, and distinguish individual sounds or phonemes in spoken words. Phonemic awareness involves understanding that words are made up of separate sounds and then being able to hear, blend, segment, and manipulate those sounds. Research shows that phonemic awareness instruction is most effective when students are taught to manipulate phonemes with letters, when it explicitly focuses on one or two types of phoneme manipulations rather than multiple types, and when students are taught in small groups. Phonics refers to the relationship between letters and sounds in language. Phonics involves understanding how letters represent sounds and using that knowledge to decode written words during reading and encode words during writing. Many people have the misconception that the science of reading is solely based on phonics, but phonics is just one piece of a very large and complex puzzle. According to the research, explicit and systematic phonics instruction provides beginning readers, at-risk readers, and low-achieving readers with a higher chance of learning how to read proficiently in comparison to other forms of instruction. Now let's move on to fluency, the third pillar of literacy development. Before we can help students build their fluency skills, we must first understand what fluency is. So what does it mean to be fluent? Fluency is a student's ability to rapidly and accurately recall basic skills from long-term memory to free up cognitive capacity so that students can spend more time on high-level skills like comprehension and written expression. Fluency includes accuracy, speed, and expression. Let's break those three terms down more to fully understand what students should be able to do. An integral component of fluency is the ability to identify letters, letter patterns, and isolated words accurately. This is called accuracy, and quickly, otherwise known as speed. Fluency integrates this automatic word identification with the application of intonation, rhythm, otherwise known as prosody, and phrasing at the text level. Accuracy then refers to correctly identifying words on the first attempt. When a word is identified correctly, the meaning retrieved from the reader's oral vocabulary is one that makes sense with the other words in the sentence. Accuracy is intertwined with the theory of automaticity, which is the idea that students must develop their word recognition skills so that they can focus their energy on understanding what they're reading. Automaticity is a necessary component, then, of fluency. Speed is another component of fluency. When students can read quickly while simultaneously comprehending the meaning of the text, this is a great indicator of their literacy skills. At the same time, some students might be reading so fast that they don't fully understand what they're reading, which is why importance should not be placed solely on speed, but rather as a consideration when assessing a student's fluency skills. In fluency, prosody, or expression, refers to the ability to read orally in a way that sounds like spoken language. It includes components such as tone, pitch, volume, emphasis, and rhythm, which ultimately signifies the student's understanding of what is being read. A student who has a strong grasp of expression will pause at appropriate times, emphasize important words, and use emotion when reading aloud. This slide shows how the three fluency components operate in a cycle. All three of these are needed to become a fluent reader. Accuracy, speed, and prosody, again the patterns of rhythm and sound or expression, are the three essential components of fluent reading. Students must first develop accuracy with letter-sound correspondence, and then whole word reading to successfully decode text. Once accuracy is established, students build speed and prosody into their oral reading through daily practice. This ultimately leads to comprehension. Fluency has been called the bridge between decoding and reading comprehension because it is so important to students' ability to understand text. Fluency not only facilitates comprehension, but it also serves as a quick way to screen students for reading difficulties and can be improved through classroom instruction. Through assessment of fluency, teachers gain valuable information that they can use to support students' reading development. So, what should an instructor listen for when measuring fluency? When working with students on fluency, instructors will listen for the three components. Accuracy and speed are often measured using words correct per minute, and we'll see an example of this later in the module. Measuring prosody often requires a rubric, such as this example, to track pauses, emotion, and emphasis. In this example, the instructor uses the following rubric scales to rate reader fluency on the dimensions of expression and volume, phrasing, smoothness, and pace. Scores range from 4 to 16. Generally, scores below 8 would indicate that fluency may be a concern. Scores of 8 or above indicate that the student is making good fluency progress. So let's take a minute and reflect on what we've learned so far about fluency in this module. What is fluency? Fluency is the ability to read text with accuracy, speed, and prosody, or expression. Why is fluency important? Fluency is the bridge to comprehension. Strong fluency skills free cognitive resources to better process the meaning of words. Reading smoothly and at an appropriate pace or rate indicates that a student has developed some automaticity and is able to retrieve previously learned words effortlessly. We now know the definition of fluency and why it is important, but as instructors, what should we be listening for when assessing our students' fluency skills? We learned that fluent readers exhibit the following skills: well-developed word recognition that allows the reader to decode words automatically, reading effortlessly and with expression, grouping words quickly without stumbling over words, reading naturally as if speaking, and using appropriate expression and inflection. Readers who are still developing their fluency skills, however, struggle to recognize words and therefore tend to stumble when reading aloud. Reading is often choppy and slow, and because the focus is on each individual word, tends to sound monotone and lack inflection. Less fluent readers must focus their attention on decoding the words, leaving them little attention for understanding the meaning of the text. Therefore, they may struggle to explain what happened in the text when prompted. Let's take a moment to listen to a first grade reader and a fourth grade reader to assess for fluency. As you watch these readers, look for key takeaways. What similarities and differences do you notice in the first grade reader and the fourth grade reader's level of fluency?
What does a fluent first grade reader look like? At this age, fluency means reading the words and punctuation more smoothly and at a natural speed. It should sound more like normal speech, normal first grade speech, with a few pauses and not too fast.
George Washington Carver was smart and he was kind. He used what he learned to help people have better lives. The mice are not always safe at night. The owl's big round eyes can see even small mice in the dark.
A long time ago, Bear was up and about all year long, and the other animals were not too happy about it.
But remember, understanding matters. So, after reading, check that they understand.
Can you show me where the problem is?
The bear keeps knocking over Mouse's house.
So what to look for by the end of the year? Well, come summer, first graders can read words correctly and somewhat smoothly, and they can read at a natural speed, which means not too fast to get in the way of understanding. What does a fluent reader in fourth grade look like? Have you heard your fourth grader read lately? At this age, they'll probably be reading pretty smoothly and at a speed that doesn't get in the way of them understanding what they read.
While I was still a baby, my father washed me and fed me and changed my diapers and did all the millions of other things a mother normally does for her child.
You'll probably see them correct themselves as they read, or needing help with pronunciation. Each kid will sound a little differently as they read.
Early methods used by miners to keep the tunnels from caving didn't always work.
I think that all the love he had felt for my mother when she was alive, he now lavished upon me.
A smooth reader still has to understand, so make sure after they've read a bit that you can tell that they're understanding what they read.
What can you infer about what his relationship is, Danny's relationship is with his dad?
I think that he really likes his dad because he works all day with the shop and stuff, and then he works at the filling station, and his dad has raised him his whole life, so he's pretty much been taken care of.
So how do you know if your child's on track? Well, come summer, fourth graders who read fluently read more complex texts smoothly and with some expression. Read at a natural speed, self-correct mistakes as they go, and don't just read the words, they understand what they read.
What are some key takeaways from viewing these two videos on what fluent readers sound like? Fluent readers recognize words with automaticity, which allows them to read at a natural speed. This leads to comprehension. Also, you'll notice that practice and repetition is key. Every student is different, but all students require frequent and consistent opportunities to practice. What is one thing you noticed about the difference between the first grade fluent reader and the fourth grade fluent reader? You might have noticed the speed at which they were reading, or their ability to decode more complex words as they engage with more challenging text. How will you make sure that you're intentional in planning for your students to build fluency? Make sure to build time into your daily plans, whether it's in a whole group or a small group setting, and make it a consistent priority. So now we understand what fluency is and why it's important to building student literacy, and you know what to listen for in the classroom. So how do you teach it? Let's take some time and review some instructional strategies that you can employ to help students grow their emerging fluency skills. We have learned that oral reading fluency is the ability to read text accurately, at an appropriate rate, and with expression. Oral reading fluency assessments, or ORFs, O-R-F-S, are a commonly used tool for assessing accuracy and rate. During an ORF assessment, students read a grade level passage aloud for 1 minute while the teacher notes any errors. The total words correct per minute, or WCPM, is then calculated. Here are some really good reasons to utilize ORF assessments. First, they're quick and easy to administer, and they typically only take about a minute. Second, they can be used as a screening or progress monitoring tool. Third, you can compare student scores to national norms to get a better idea of how students are doing. And finally, ORF assessments provide a quick measure of automaticity. They're also predictive of overall reading skill. Research indicates that the ORF, Oral Reading Fluency Assessment, is a great predictor of future reading performance. So what does an ORF tell you? It can tell you whether a student is at risk for reading difficulties because it is a good predictor of future reading performance. You can also use ORF as a progress monitoring measure to determine if a student is making adequate growth. ORF has consistently been shown to have moderate to high correlation with reading comprehension. Ask your point of contact or your building administrator if the ORF assessment is available in your school, regardless of the grade level that you teach. In addition to the ORF, instructors can support students in becoming more fluent readers by providing them with models of fluent reading and having students practice reading passages with the instructor's guidance. While there are many ways to increase student fluency, two forms that have shown evidence of improving this skill are repeated readings and fluency drills. Repeated readings involve asking students to read and reread a passage or a story. In studies of the effects of repeated reading, students have been required to reread a story a certain number of times or until a specified level of fluency was reached. In a classroom setting, students might intersperse their repeated readings with activities that give them an opportunity to respond to what they have read, rather than merely reading the story or passage again and again. Fluency drills occur when a student reads a passage to an adult. The adult provides appropriate assistance and encouragement. The student then rereads the passage until the reading is quite fluent. This should take approximately 3 to 4 rereadings. Let's take a look at a video that's an outstanding example of repeated reading instruction, simultaneously aligned with fluency drills.
Repeated reading is the instructional practice of having students practice rereading the same text as a way to support the development of oral reading fluency. In repeated reading, students are repeatedly exposed to the same words, which should help students recognize them more efficiently. Goals are set to gradually increase their reading rate and accuracy. Once this is accomplished, students move on to more challenging text.
So this is a story we're going to use to practice your fluency. It's called Team Colors. In this story, Madison is trying to figure out the perfect gift to buy her or make or buy for her favorite coach, Miss Acosta. Okay, so you're going to read it 3 different times, and each time I'm going to time you and see how many words you get in a minute. And then afterwards we'll figure out how many words you got in a minute, and I'll coach you if you had any tricky words. And then we'll do it 3 times, and we're just looking for you to get a little bit more each time, because that shows more fluency. All right? When you are ready, you may begin.
Madison's favorite coach was Miss Acosta. Madison wanted to give Mr. Acosta a gift, but she didn't have any money. She used a toothpick.
All right, that was well done. So 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65. So that time you got 65 words in a minute, and you did a nice job fixing coach. Here at the end of this word, you said fingers. Check your ending there. What's that word?
Finger.
There you go. Great fixing. And right here, this was a tricky word. So,
Third.
Oh, you fixed it. Because now do you understand she's making something?
Yeah.
Okay. And she's using the salt and the flour. This was a tricky word for you. So I noticed sometimes, because that was the first time you read it, you were working on figuring out some hard words. So this time I want you to see if you can put the words together a little bit faster, more like talking. She twirled her necklace on her finger. Just like that. You try it.
She twirled her necklace on her finger.
Oh, lovely. All right, my friend. Are you ready for a second go round? Okay, whenever you're ready, you may be. Great job. All right, well, you definitely got more words this time. 87, 88, 89. You got all the way up to 89 on that one. And your words were together more smoothly, just like talking. So right here is, you said hold. She used a toothpick to make a hold through the middle. What would make sense there at the end?
Hold.
Great fixing. And right here, you said, oh, you fixed it. You said then she black, and then you fixed baked. Great job making it make sense. And right here, Madison, you said spreaded. We actually don't need an ED on the end of this. We just say Madison spread. Do you see the ending?
Mm-hmm.
All right, my friend. Did great. Are you ready for your third and last read? Okay, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Madison's favorite coach was Miss Acosta. Madison wanted to give Mr. Acosta a gift, but she didn't have any money. Madison sat with her head in her hands. She twirled her necklace on her finger. Newspapers.
Right there. All right, so that time you got 90 words. So a little bit faster. And you did a nice job making it smooth, working on your fluency. All right.
We have shared ideas for repeated readings, and you've now seen some in action. But additional steps to building fluency include goal setting, corrective feedback, and graphing performance. As indicated in the video, repeated readings are when the student reads the same passage several times, with the aim of reducing the time and number of errors with each attempt. Now pair that with goal setting based on the number of correct words to read per minute. Students then set a goal to read further in the passage or to make fewer errors than the time before, thus improving motivation and showing growth. The instructor can define weekly learning targets as short-term goals for monitoring progress, while also identifying an end-of-year grade level target for the number of words read per minute as a long-term goal. Instructors also need to provide corrective and immediate feedback when students make an error while reading. Have the students sound out and repeat the word, and then go back and reread the whole sentence. Finally, have students graph their fluency performance so that they can see their progress and compare results. This can continue over time, with goals being adjusted as students improve. Student-engaged assessment and progress tracking motivates students and support achievement. Tracking their own progress teaches students to continually monitor, reflect on, and share their progress toward learning targets or goals that they've set for themselves. Using assessment in such a way is motivating and fun for students. Who'd have thought that? A key piece in the success of student-engaged assessment is maintaining the belief that everyone is capable of high achievement and that learning comes as a result of effort. This goes for both students and teachers. Earlier in the module, we looked at an instructor-facing rubric to measure fluency. To support students in self-assessing their own reading fluency, however, visually friendly rubrics with clear criteria for success can be very helpful. After introducing a learning target to students, in this case, the learning target is, I can read with fluency. I put my words together so my reading sounds right and makes sense. This means that I am paying attention to my phrasing. After students have been introduced to the learning target, show them the phrasing rubric. Ensure that students understand each of the 4 rubrics that will be addressed. Phrasing is on this slide, and in following slides, we'll look at rate, punctuation, and expression. Students need to learn how to assess themselves within each of these areas, scoring a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. It can be overwhelming for students when all 4 rubrics are plopped in front of them and explained. Therefore, it is suggested to explicitly address only one area at a time, be it phrasing, rate, punctuation, or expression. Furthermore, it may not even be necessary to use all 4 rubrics with your students if their next step in fluency is tied specifically to rate, for example. Use your professional judgment to make smart decisions for your kids. Here we see the student rate rubric. Along with the given learning target, I can read with fluency. I read at the correct rate, not too quickly and not too slowly. My reading sounds right and makes sense. The punctuation rubric is the next rubric on this slide. The learning target that accompanies the punctuation rubric. I can read fluently. I use the punctuation to help me know how to read the story so that it sounds right and makes sense. And last but not least, the expression rubric. The expression rubric learning target is that I can read fluently. I read with expression so that it sounds interesting and makes sense. Students actually love the graphics on this rubric and can relate to each of the standards 1, 2, 3, and 4. In order for students to be able to self-assess their fluency using any of these 4 rubrics, they need to hear themselves as readers. Rather than asking students to read aloud, listen to themselves, and then self-assess, it's often much more effective to teach students to record their thinking, play it back, and then self-assess. Some other recommended instructional activities that engage students in reading aloud include student adult reading. This is similar to fluency drills, as this strategy is meant for one-to-one sessions between a teacher and a student, where the adult reads the text first to model fluent reading, and the student reads the same passage back to the adult. Choral reading is reading aloud in unison with a whole class or group of students. Choral reading helps build students' fluency, self-confidence, and motivation. Because students are reading aloud together, students who may ordinarily feel self-conscious or nervous about reading aloud have built-in support. Audio-assisted reading. In this strategy, students practice oracy by reading along with an audiobook. This form of instruction can be adjusted for different reading levels, eventually having students read the text independently without the audiobook. In partner reading, students can be put into pairs with students of different reading levels being partnered together. In this case, the stronger reader can serve as a model for their less fluent partner, helping them with word recognition and giving them support along the way. This, however, is just one way of doing partner reading. You can also pair students of the same reading level together. The Reader's Theater exercise makes reading fun by involving the whole class in a play. Not only is it fun, but it gives students a reason to reread texts and practice their fluency. It also promotes cooperative interaction with peers and makes reading more appealing. Let's see some of these strategies being implemented in a high school classroom. As you watch, consider how you might include these activities in your lesson plans.
As you learned earlier, oral reading fluency plays an important role in reading development. And as with other elements of reading, fluency improves with practice. But did you know that fluency practice can be motivational for students? In this video segment, Anne McGowan works with a high school class to demonstrate and model a variety of fluency strategies. Watch as she uses choral reading to work with the whole class.
We're going to be reading today together. Remember, we do the choral reading where we're all reading a story together. Remember, part of choral reading is just to continue reading, keeping up with the pace of everyone else. Don't worry if you don't get every word or you stumble over a word. Just continue on following along with us all. If you need to use your finger to follow along, that's super. I'm going to be reading just the title of the story and then the introduction, and we'll all start with the words, his given name is Ray Charles Robinson. Do you all see that, where that is? Okay. The story is Ray Charles. Ray Charles' final recording, Genius Loves Company.
Choral reading is a strong technique for modeling fluency. By leading or guiding students through the reading, Anne models or emphasizes some important elements of fluency, including pauses, stops, intonation, and stress. Through her modeling, students hear and participate in a fluent reading of the passage. And choral reading is great for total class or group participation. Students with reading difficulties find choral reading helpful and non-intimidating.
His given name is Ray Charles Robinson. He dropped the Robinson so he wouldn't be confused with the great boxer Sugar Ray Robinson. But you can just call him the genius.
Another way to practice fluency is by partner reading. This strategy pairs a less capable reader with a more capable one. The instructional advantages are many. As you watch, notice the way in which one reader gently helps the other as they read through the story. The goal is for both students to read fluently and automatically with as few stops as possible. The less fluent reader has the advantage of hearing a more fluent reader, while the fluent reader receives practice in critically observing the text while listening to her partner read the selection.
Ray grew up in Greenville, Florida, with his mother and his father's first wife. Some of the earliest memories were of music. A neighbor, Wild Pittman, owned a cafe and had a piano. Ray was 3 years old and was in the cafe one day when Mr. Pitt, as Ray called him, started playing.
Ray went over to the piano and just started. He remembered. It astonished and amazed me. His fingers flying, all those chords coming together, the sounds jumping at me and ringing in my ears. From that day on, music was the only thing he really wanted to get out of bed for. From the moment I learned that there were piano keys to be mashed, I started mashing them. trying to make sounds out of feelings.
When he was 5, his 4-year-old brother George was playing in a tub of water and started struggling.
Next, we will see a reader's theater in which students use a play from the in-class reader to practice oral reading fluency. Student motivation is a significant benefit when you use reader's theater. Students are usually motivated to practice before a performance of the reading, and observers enjoy listening or reading along with the performance. For many students, reader's theater helps them understand critical elements such as author's voice and its effect on fluent reading.
We're going to be reading the story Lost and Found. So narrator, go ahead and take the first part.
Lost and Found, a skit about first love, cell phones, and the almost lost art of communication.
As students become skilled at reader's theater, you may encourage them to act out or perform their part in a play. Because fluency practice is required to build oral reading fluency, any encouragement you provide to students through repeated readings will help to build their fluency.
The noise and meet a girl the old-fashioned way, face to face. But first he has to get her attention.
Hey Kev, isn't that Angela from geometry? Have you ever worked up the nerve to talk to her?
Not yet, but she did almost look at me when I dropped my book the other day. She's so...
I know, but girls like that don't have time for guys their own age. Besides, that shirt you're wearing is scarier looking than this food.
I love this shirt. My grandma made it for me. And you know what? Today's the day I'm going to talk to Angela.
Good luck.
Hi, Angela. We're in geometry together. My name is Kevin.
Hello? Hi. How'd you like that English test? Didn't I tell you it was a killer? Nah, just trying to survive this awful lunch. How did they make meatloaf look purple anyways? Okay, talk to you later.
Based on the strategies you learned on teaching and supporting reading fluency, which will you implement in your class first? Regardless of the grade level you teach, any of the strategies shared will help students build fluency. So, commit to one and intentionally plan time to use it in class. As we conclude this module on fluency, let's review the key points we learned by first watching a video clip.
What do we mean when we talk about fluency? Fluency with text is reading words with no noticeable cognitive or mental effort. It's when the fundamental skills are so automatic that it doesn't require conscious attention. So, what does that mean exactly? Let's give some examples. People can perform many tasks with automaticity or automatically, like walking, riding a bike, or driving a car. Fluency, like riding a bike, develops through practice. Students go from sounding out individual letters and letter combinations to reading words quickly and effortlessly, with lots of opportunities for practice until reading the words can be performed with a high rate of success. Fluency in oral reading has 3 parts: accuracy, which is reading with few errors; reading speed, or the rate at which a student reads; and prosody, or the skill of reading aloud with proper intonation, phrasing, and expression. To be a fluent reader, all 3 of these components must be in place. So, what do fluent readers look like? Fluency research says that successful readers rely primarily on the letters in the words rather than context or pictures to identify familiar and unfamiliar words. They process virtually every letter. They use letter-sound correspondences to identify words. They have a reliable strategy for decoding words. And they read words a sufficient number of times for words to become automatic. Why should we focus on fluency? To gain meaning from text, students must read fluently. Proficient readers are so automatic with each component skill, phonological awareness, decoding, vocabulary, that they focus their attention on constructing meaning from the print. These component skills need to be well developed to support understanding. It's not enough to be simply accurate. The skill must be automatic. So fluency is not an end in itself, but is the bridge to comprehension. Fluent reading frees up cognitive resources to better process the meaning of the words. Now that we know why it's necessary, how do we help build fluency? Effective fluency instruction should include repeated readings or practice with passages that the student can read with a high level of accuracy. It should be brief, about 15 to 30 minutes. It should include corrective feedback. Students should be able to set goals and graph progress. And teachers should keep in mind that fluency is only part of the bigger picture. Thanks for watching the Big 5 and Under 5.
Throughout this module, and as summarized in the video, we learned that fluency components consist of accuracy, speed, and prosody, or expression. Fluency proves very important because it serves as a bridge from decoding to comprehension. Instructors need to provide ample opportunities for practicing oral reading to build students' fluency skills, which includes corrective feedback, goal setting, and graphing performance. Despite best efforts, instructors will encounter students who struggle with reading fluently. So look for deficiencies in the first two pillars, phonemic awareness and phonics, as possible causes. We hope you enjoyed this module on the science of reading fluency. Please complete the Check for Understanding, CFU, and the survey included in the Google Classroom. Thank you, and we look forward to providing continued support for your professional growth at university instructors.